Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're just getting set up here. Just as a note of housekeeping, we will have translation during this session. So if you can please just place on the earphones that you have at your seat when we come to the stage for translation. That will be from our first speaker. And we will endeavor to keep you all awake. We know everyone's just come from lunch. You probably want to take a nap, but not during this session. You can take your naps at 5 p.m. We're almost there. We're almost there, getting closer. Okay, perfect. All right, I think we are set. So I have the pleasure of welcoming you all to today's session, which is on the development of inclusive care and support systems across the life cycle. This session has been convened on behalf of ADB with colleagues from UNICEF as well, and all of the wonderful colleagues that we have here on our panel from various different governments and also from the ILO. So we're very glad that you could join us today, and we're hoping that this will be a riveting discussion as we move forward in this agenda with our very esteemed and large panel. We also have one colleague who will be joining us remotely online, which we will turn to quite shortly. So if we go to the next slide, please. I will start off with just very briefly introducing myself. So my name is Lauren Whitehead, and I am the Social Protection and Gender Lead for UNICEF. I am based in New York, typically, so still recovering from jet lag. It is somewhere in the middle of the night in my head right now, but very happy to be here in Manila and to be back with everyone from ADB for this wonderful Asia Pacific Social Protection Week, which I think we all can agree has been riveting from the start and has been jam-packed with information. So for this session, we are going to start with these opening remarks and very brief introductions so that you know who is here on our panel. And then we will be moving into our lightning talk round 1. And then we have a lightning talk round 2. And what we mean by lightning talk is that each panelist has been compelled to only spend 5 minutes speaking, which we know is very difficult, so we will cheer them on for their 5 minutes of speaking, and then we will abruptly cut them off at the end of those 5 minutes so that we have the chance to hear a plethora and diversity of responses and insights. And then we will close with Q&A and closing remarks, where we will open the floor to the microphone for any of you to add your comments, thoughts, and opinions. So the key objectives for today, as you see on your screen, are to ascertain if we could just go back, to ascertain the importance of inclusive care and support systems, to explore the need to leverage multi-sectoral social protection, and specifically to highlight some opportunities and challenges, including in financing of these systems, which are increasingly on the rise, but there's quite a long way to go. If we go to the next slide, wonderful. So I hope that you're in this session because you know that across the life cycle, everyone at some point in their life needs access to care and support. Inclusive care and support systems are essential, we know, for developing human capabilities, achieving equal socioeconomic participation, and of course, ensuring functioning societies. We know that there is a triple dividend, and some would even say a quadruple or quintuple dividend, in investing in these systems, including facilitating women's labor force participation, creating decent jobs in the paid care sectors, and also in enhancing individuals' capabilities throughout the life course, meaning to enhance their autonomy, dignity, and so forth. Despite this, however, unpaid care and domestic work actually amounts to an uncounted $11 trillion a year, or roughly 9% of the global GDP. And those are statistics that the ILO has produced, particularly recognizing the importance of unpaid care and its lack of recognition. Next slide, please. So even though care and support is this essential for all individuals throughout their life course, we know that access to high quality care and support is extremely limited. And access, especially through social protection systems, though growing, is still quite fledgling in most contexts and countries, which is why we have convened this panel today. Traditional care and support models do not typically respect youth and do not typically respect those in old age. Traditional care and support models also perpetuate this sense of a dependency paradigm that people with disabilities need to be cared for, rather than the fact that persons living with disabilities and older persons require support and not necessarily to be cared for, not as recipients of care. Traditional care and support models also concentrate heavily on the family and household as being responsible for the provision of that care and support. And we're not necessarily contesting that that may sit and center within a family and a household, but that families and households deserve to be supported. And they deserve to be supported through publicly funded systems at the state level. Often, traditional care and support models focus on institutionalized services, so sending people away from their homes, away from their communities. And today we will talk about community-based care and support. And also, these systems very often neglect the autonomy and dignity of those persons who are using care, seeing them again as recipients, passive recipients, rather than active agents and independent agents in their own care and support. In addition to that, we know that unpaid care places a disproportionate gender burden. Very often, care and support, unpaid care and support, are seen as women's work or girls' work and something that is kind of relegated to the domestic sphere in that way. If you look at the statistics, UNICEF has actually produced some of these statistics in collaboration with ILO, that globally, every day, girls spend 160 million hours more than boys on unpaid care. 160 million hours every single day. We know that every year, women spend on average 67 additional days on work that is largely unrecognized, unremunerated, and underrepresented. So the purpose of this session and other sessions that are speaking on this topic are about recognizing this, but also demonstrating how we can actually build better systems that shift these burdens of care and support from the traditional gender realms in which they often sit. We also know that this issue of unpaid care and support can be compounded for caregivers of children and family members with disabilities. In the case of children with disabilities, many of their parents, are single mothers, often due to stigma, and therefore they face even more responsibilities than the average parent, for example. The world is evolving, however, and we know that systems of care and support are evolving. Some of the trends that we're seeing that are changing is a shift in this traditional breadwinner model, where you have women in more of the domestic sphere and you have men in the world of work. This is shifting because we have increasing numbers of women's labor force participation and women really moving into the workplace. This increasing gender parity in labor has unfortunately, however, led to more women having to juggle both paid work and unpaid care work, because that unpaid care work still is not equally distributed across the household and still remains concentrated with them. So even though we have more women moving in the labor force, which is quite positive, they are now shouldering a double burden of having to work for pay and also still having to work in the home. We find that there is a positive trend of girls' education, especially secondary education, that's increasing, and the World Bank actually published some new statistics on this recently. However, and how is this related to care and support? Well, when girls are able to go to school, this is quite positive. They're not pulled into as much domestic work at home. However, we're finding that the learning to earning pathway is in jeopardy. So even though they gain that education and may move through secondary level, by the time they become women, by the time they graduate and could go into the workforce, they're often being pulled back into domestic spheres and back into unpaid care and unable to actually leverage that education that they've gleaned. We also know that societies are aging significantly and rapidly, which is reducing the active workforce that's contributing to these societies, but also is implying a larger demand for care and support. So there's even greater strain and stress put on households and even more expectations out of systems to be able to keep pace with the aging of populations, especially specifically in this region in Asia Pacific. And if we go to the very last slide there, we know that social protection, the need for social protection, is more critical than ever as a result of these shifting trends. And yes, if we go to the last slide. Yes, wonderful. So what this discussion will help us center a little bit is what are some of the innovations that are being applied, especially in multi-sectoral solutions and approaches to care and support. Part of the idea behind this is to help us really understand how we increase that access to high quality, affordable care and support services that are available to enable people to remain in their communities, to live dignified lives, to live independent lives, et cetera, for children, for persons with disabilities, for older persons, while also reducing the gender inequities and inequalities that are driven by unpaid care and domestic work in particular. So in an ideal world, if we see the last slide there, we would be able to see a world where women and girls can participate fully in economic opportunities such as education, such as employment, without restriction because of unpaid care expectations, and where they're able to access family-friendly policies when they are in the world of work, for example, things like affordable childcare, things like parental leave, to avoid being set back in their lives because of caregiving. We would want to see a world where persons with disabilities can access community-based support. That is a rejection of the institutionalization of previous generations, where there's costed support that's supported through public funds, where there's access to human assistance, assistive technologies, and things like transport and housing, which can be quite difficult otherwise if they're not provided for by the state or supported. And a world where older persons are able to live dignified lives independently, age with functionality that's supported by social protection, and able to access the same community and home-based support. So again, moving from the trends of institutionalization of the past. So I have the pleasure now of turning to our fantastic and esteemed panel, who are going to talk to you about several different country examples and some innovative tools that ILO has developed specifically for this topic. And so without further ado, I would like to go ahead and move to our first panelist. This is going to be our first lightning round that we're starting with. And again, we have 2 lightning rounds because we have many panelists who are excited to talk today. So for this first lightning round, we're going to talk about why multi-sectoral integrated care and support systems are necessary. And based on the experience of the countries that we have represented here, what are some of the greatest opportunities and challenges in this space? So first, we will have Mr. Qian Sen, who will be presenting from China, from the People's Republic of China. And he will be talking to us a little bit about what it means to leverage public finance for things like family-friendly policies in the space of childcare, but also thinking about long-term care and why this is such an important topic in China. So we will pass over to Mr. Qian Sen to begin. Thank you. And please do put on your headsets for translation.
尊敬的劳伦女士，各位同仁，下午好！非常感谢联合国儿基会和亚洲开发银行邀请中国财政部参加此次论坛，很荣幸在此发言，介绍中国长期以来在完善社会保障体系建设以及对儿童、残疾人和老年的照护支持等方面的工作和成效，同时学习借鉴其他国家的优秀做法和经验，与各国共同探讨社会保障体系建设的新做法和新路径。Next slide。 取得的成绩，近10年来，中国财政部门实现全生命周期照护，主要通过完善社会保障体系建设和税收政策来实现，并且在儿童、残疾人和老年人等群体照护支持方面取得了一些成就。中国把社会保障体系建设摆在突出的位置，深化体制改革，强化顶层设计，促进中国社会保障事业高质量发展。中国各级财政部门将社会保障作为财政支出的优先方向，不断加大财政投入力度，为社会保障改革发展提供有力支持。近10年来，儿童健康及早期发展得到有力支持，养老服务体系建设日趋完善，养老机构持续健康发展，扶残助残工作不断取得新的成效，在儿童、残疾人和老年人照护方面积累了一定的经验。在此，重点向大家介绍2方面的工作和成效。Next slide。 加快社会保障体系建设，完善家庭友好的财政政策，积极应对人口老龄化。第一，通过财政补助支持公共卫生项目，从生命周期伊始建立家庭友好的全生命照护。中国财政部出台了一系列措施，围绕全生育链条、全生命周期给予支持，推动降低生育养育的成本。在孕前阶段，通过相关的补助资金，支持地方为农村妇女免费提供叶酸、免费的孕前检查；在孕产阶段，支持地方为孕产妇免费提供产前的检查、产后的访视、新生儿护理指导等服务，并安排资金加强儿科、产科等紧缺医护人员的培养，加强妇幼保健机构的服务建设。在养育阶段，通过下达基本公共服务补助资金，主要用于支持地方为儿童免费接种免疫疫苗， 为0到6岁儿童、孕产妇、老年人以及高血压、2型糖尿病患者等重点人群提供健康管理以及增补叶酸、预防神经管缺陷等免费服务。第二，健全医疗保险和生育保险制度，促进性别平等。中国财政部积极配合相关部门，完善医保和生育保险政策，充分发挥医保、生育保险在参保女职工医疗费用、生育津贴待遇等方面的保障作用。一是住院分娩等生育相关医疗费用可通过生育保险予以报销；二是新生儿出生即可以参加城乡居民医疗保险，当年就可以享受医保待遇；三是通过生育保险为职工发放产假期间的生育津贴，通过生育保险制度均衡了用人单位的用工成本，有力保障了女职工的生育权益，促进了性别平等。三是加强养老服务保障，实现全生命周期的照护。中国财政部通过资金渠道开展居家和社区基本养老服务提升行动，支持各地城乡老年福利机构、社区养老服务设施以及农村特困人员供养服务设施改造，培育居家和社区养老服务组织和发展。Next slide。强化税收优惠政策，加强对家庭及其单位的家庭友好支持政策，为体现对家庭友好政策的鼓励和照顾，应对低生育率造成的人口老龄化，中国实施了多项税收政策，对家庭及其单位予以支持。一、准予在企业所得税前扣除有关支出，对企业按照国家规定的范围和标准为职工缴纳的生育保险费，以及向包括怀孕、生育女职工在内的职工发放合理的工资支出，准予在计算企业所得税前扣除。二、对相关的收入免征个人所得税，对生育妇女按照国家有关规定取得的生育津贴、生育医疗费以及其他属于生育保险的津贴补贴免征个人所得税，对独生子女补贴、托儿补助费不征收个人所得税。三、设置个人所得税专项扣除。18年，中国实施个人所得税改革，围绕与人民群众密切相关的教育、养育、住房、医疗等重点支出，设立了3岁以下婴幼儿照护、子女教育、继续教育、大病医疗、住房贷款利息、住房租金、赡养老人等6项专项的扣除。2022年增加了3岁以下的婴幼儿照护专项扣除。这7项扣除兼顾了家庭的差异负担和支出，使个人的所得税费用扣除更加合理。2023年又将3岁以下的婴幼儿照护、子女教育、赡养老人等提高了标准1000元，进一步减轻了负担。以上是中国财政部长期以来在完善社会保障体系以及支持儿童、残疾人、老年等全生命周期照护和支持发展服务，并注重保护女性权益等方面的情况。非常感谢此次发言，我的发言结束，谢谢。Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That was very fantastic and interesting to hear from the Ministry of Finance, specifically around some fiscal subsidies and tax incentive policies that have been applied in China. So I think there's a lot to learn, and hopefully there'll be some good questions from the audience as we get to the Q&A. So next, I would like to go ahead and offer the podium to Mr. Sogbaktar Mangalsuren from Mongolia, who's from the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, and he will be speaking to us a bit about the child benefits and disability allowances in Mongolia, and even more specifically around parental leave and caregiver leave, with Mongolia being the only country in Asia Pacific that actually has this nationally mandated. Please, Mr. Sogi.
So, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for inviting me for presenting the country case in this conference. So please, next slide. So I would like start straight away. So research shows that household had a single woman with many children and families with disabled members are often vulnerable to poverty. So this is the common case in the world, in Mongolia also. So we took some measures in social assistance programs, and then if you see on the slides, you will see some allowances from social assistance funds is increased dramatically in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. Because of the COVID-19 is the amount of the money is increased, mostly to the people who are disabled and then the families with disabled children. And then if you see the numbers is increased on 53%, and then also in this year is increased by some of them is increased 123 times. And then also Mongolia gives to every child money. This is the universal program. Because of the COVID, we increased the amount of money 5 times, and then it's still keeping on. So next slide, please. So social insurance. There's the law on social insurance was revised and approved by Parliament this year in July. So one regulation we made is social insurance premiums for mothers or fathers who are unable to work while taking care of disabled children aged 0 to 18 who need constant care, and pension insurance premiums per minimum wage will be paid monthly from the state budget. So this will be implemented from the January next year. So this will be fully responsible for payments, and 11.4 thousand people will be participating in it. And then state budget will be spent 7 billion Mongolian Tugrik annually in contributions. Next, please. So I would like mention also employment support program for those people. So the Mongolian labor law was also revised and renewed after 22 years. So these key changes I would mention here is paternity leave and limitation on work hours and shift works. So these key changes is supporting the families who are looking after the kids with disabilities, or who are looking after the kids, younger kids, and they're not unable to work. Or if I mention it, there's pregnant women and employees with children under the age of 3 are prohibited from working on official assignment except with their own consent. So the employer shall grant their father at least 10 working days to leave, or the government will pay the 10 days salary to that period. So another one is a pregnant woman or employee with child under the age of 3 can mutually agree with the employer to perform their duties from home or remotely. So we'll try to flexible hours, and unless the organization is liquidated, it's prohibited to terminate the employment relationship, or pregnant women and mothers with children under the age of 3 at the initiative of the employer. So next slide, please. So I would say another example of the support program. So the government approve every year 7 to 8 the employment programs to groups of the population. One of them is Women's Employment Support Program. So the goal of this program is to increase number of the child care centers, so to acquire remote working skills, to provide professional skills in short time period of time, and then this will be 10 million Turkish, like 2,900 US dollar will be given eligible women for the period of 36 months without collateral or interest. So the following women will be participate: unemployed women, or women taking care of young children at home, women with disabilities, self-employed women, or pregnant and lactating mothers with young children. So this is our the case examples to present to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, especially for referencing specifically the legal reforms that are necessary to support some of these policies. I think I noticed around social insurance, around the new labor laws that have been put in place. These are also very innovative approaches. I think that a lot of the countries here can learn from, especially, and including my own, I might add as well. So very good to hear this. I think next we are going to have Mr. Dinar Karishma from Bappenas and the government of Indonesia. Bappenas being the Department of Planning, the Ministry of Planning within the government of Indonesia. And I think he's going to be joining us online, if we might be able to switch to the Zoom.
Good afternoon.
Wonderful. Okay. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much. Are we able to share screen? Okay. Okay, so Mr. Karishma, we're very glad to have you. Thank you for joining us remotely. We know you weren't able to be here in person with us today, but we're very glad to still have you. And we're also especially glad to hear from you speaking about integrated care and support in social protection systems and some of the targeted schemes in Indonesia in particular. And I believe we're switching so you can share screen. Fantastic. You now have the floor
Yeah.
for your 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Well, if we talk about integration of services in Indonesia, it will be taking quite a long time, but I try to focus on something that is more focusing on care. Currently, Indonesia is in the process of aging, and we have about 27 million older people in Indonesia. Based on our latest data, even though this is not nationally representative, but it can be used as a figure, we have about 10% of our older population that are in need of long-term care. So the number will be around 2.7 to 3 million older people. So these older people are now still dependent on their family. 80 to 90% of older people in Indonesia are taken care of by a family. So this is highlighting the importance of care availability, because of course those who were given the responsibility to take care of the older people are mostly women. And based on our data, about 15 to 20% of these women in the family that are providing care to the older people, they actually have a university degree. So of course, this is a loss for the economy when they have to pull out from the labor force and do the care provision to their family. So that's why the Indonesia has ratified the National Strategy of Aging since 2021. That is also focusing on the pathway of Indonesia to start providing the long-term care for the most vulnerable population, mostly older people and people with disabilities. Of course, there is also a lot of work on the care for children that need to be done. But at least now we have the legal framework that is used as the base for us to develop a better care provision for older people and people with disabilities. So the way that we are working now, we are still in the phase of piloting in 2 provinces in Yogyakarta and Bali. Basically, we try to connect the 2 green boxes that you may see in your screen. On the top, there are older people and the families, and in the bottom, we have all of the services that currently available through several channels and ministries. And we know that even though services are available, but not all of them are accessible, or not all of the people or families that are in need of care are aware that services are available. So what we are working now is developing an integrated care hub that provide the information and also serve the community as the middleman to connect them with various services that are available for them. But also because services that are available are often insufficient, we also train them to also provide care to directly to the older population, so they can ease the burden of the family in providing care. In several locations where we did our pilot, we train a group of people in the village level for them to be able to provide case management services and link the older people in need of care with services available provided by both the government and non-government organizations. But we also train them. These are some of the people that we have trained in the village level. We also train them to provide care directly so they can support the family and the older people to conduct the care works for the older people and people with disabilities in need. So we are also trying to keep up with the technology, and we develop a digital platform for them to be able to recognize who are in the community that are in need of care and quickly respond to requests of both older people and their family when they are in need of care. And this platform that we call Silani is also an award-winning program that in the Asia Pacific level we got the award in 2000 just in this year in Singapore. I think that would be all, but I just quickly show you some of the example of how our team is working on the pilot location. They provide a large range of services in case management area, but they are also providing some direct services since some of them are actually social workers for older people that are in need of long-term care, and also active older people. We also provide some services, some preventative programs for them to be able to be healthy, to be able to be active, to be able to be given a space in the community. So it will be so the community will be more accepting to them, and hopefully it will delay the deterioration of their condition until they need the care later in their life. I think that will be all from Indonesia. I hope this can contribute a lot to the discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I was inching back to the podium. You were right at your time. So thank you very much for that riveting discussion, or for that riveting presentation there. I don't know if others feel the same, but I feel like this is maybe the third time that I've heard of some very advanced digital platforms in Indonesia specifically. So I think there's a lot to be seen there. And I think the last slide that was, or the second to last slide on the screen on Silani is very, very interesting to see sort of how we move this into the future. And I know there was also some commentary in one of our plenaries that older populations, for example, don't necessarily have the capabilities to use digital technologies, but I think some of these innovations coming out of Indonesia may be challenging that sort of precondition and pre-understanding of what older populations are able to do. So I think in this first round, this first lightning round, and very, very many thanks to all three of our panelists for this first round, who all stuck very appropriately to their time. We've heard about a few different trends and different perspectives that have come up in this area of multi-sectoral integrated care and support systems. So we've heard around fiscal subsidies. We've heard about addressing specifically the costs of providing care and support for households and finding ways creatively, such as through tax incentives, to be able to reduce some of that cost burden on households. We've heard about legal reforms as well, both in Mongolia and in Indonesia, looking at how legal frameworks can be really leveraged to put some of these policies in place, and how you can center some of this around labor law in particular, as well as some of these programs, support programs such as economic empowerment, employment generation, particularly when they're targeting women's labor contribution, which I think was mentioned by both of our participants here as well. And then we've also heard a lot in this very last presentation on service referrals and linkages. So again, going back to why care and support systems don't belong as the purview of any one ministry or any one agency, but they are necessary to bring together this multi-sectoral perspective and linkages to services that many different ministries may provide. So in our next lightning round, we're going to have three more panelists who are going to speak to you a little more specifically about how their countries have adopted care and support systems that respond to the needs of different caregivers and care users. So thinking again about children, older populations, and persons with disabilities. and what are some of the opportunities and challenges we see therein. And I recognize that our first panelist very cleverly skipped challenges, so I will be posing that question to our panelists coming up, so please get prepared for that. To start us, we will have Dr. Nantanut Sawanawut from Thailand, from the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, and she will be speaking to us about some of the disability provisions that have been put in place in Thailand, specifically the personal assistance scheme, and what importance that has for persons with disabilities, older populations, and for the government of Thailand. Please, Kun Apple.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the moderator, the speakers, and everyone. So I'm very honored to share with you about the care and support services that Thai government provide to persons with disabilities. And before I drill down to the personal assistant service, so may I just to talk broadly about overall about the statistics of persons with disabilities in Thailand. So now we have over 2,100,000 of people with disabilities, and also this number keep growing because of we are getting to the old age society, and also among these numbers, the first type of disabilities, like we have the physical challenge, this around 1 million people, and followed by the hearing impairment and the visual impairment afterwards. And also for these are people who registered, meaning that they have the disability ID card, and they would get the to be able to access to the rights and to get benefits from the government. And of course, we have, according to the Act of Empowerment of Persons with Disability in 2007, we provide like 10 sets of the services, like for example, in access to education, employment, healthcare, and personal assistant is one of which that provides services. So talking about the personal assistant, meaning is the person who help person with disabilities to live their life and to be able to participate in the society, in particular time according to the needs to their needs. Okay, and also this rooted from the principle, the concept of independent living community, and to have the idea is to empower them and to make them feel valued and be able to manage their own life potentially. So, and the services that we provide will be we assign the PA or to work according to the hours and monthly, meaning like the maximum is not exceed 6 hours per day or 180 hours per month. And some of the process and the guidelines, of course, first, in order to be able to become the PA, they need to be registered, and they require some sets of training with us that in theory like 24 hours and practical training 30 hours. And after they pass the training, they can register to either in the central office or the provincial office throughout the country. And then, so for part aside for persons with disability who are eligible to receive these services, of course, they need to be registered, and also they are required to have the disability card and need an assistant to help in performing important resources in their daily life and to be able to participate in the society, and they do not have a caregivers in that particular time, and or their caregivers unable to perform their duty at that time so that they can ask for the PA. And of course, just now mentioning about the PA earn their wage according to hour, like meaning 50 baht per hour. But their transportation is calculated separately. So many they get the different set of amount for their commuting to help. For our next slide is the limitation for our services. Of course, we have a limitation on the resources of the budgeting and also the numbers of the assistant PA. Currently, we have registered PA around like 2,000 people, but of course the demand is very much high in demand. But now we are trying to recruit more people, and the next challenge is about the working process, that we have a lack of the clearness in terms of operation, and it's quite complicated. It's quite centralized, that they need to be registered and to be permitted to be granted from the central office, and there is quite the duplicated process, meaning they still have to have many reports, many forms to fill in paper. So, and the people, they lack of motivation to perform their job. Also, they lack of the continuous knowledge development. And also, the last one is the client side. So, since there are, as I mentioned, there are high demand of persons with disabilities who request for the service, we need to expand more services on this one. And the next slide, the last slide, is about our future work. Of course, we have to have more, create a long-term plan for providing PA services in order to be able to respond to their needs, and to, of course, to develop a system by providing this service to support the current and the future situations. And also, we tend to use more technology dealing with our process, and to support create the SOP standard of practice and the guidelines, and with the collaboration among all of the stakeholders and those who are getting involved. And of course, with the person with disabilities as well. And there's a system also to conduct the monitoring and evaluation. And the next one is to strengthening the value of the work in helping persons with disabilities by creating an online media platform, just to PR about our work, that they can get more interest in becoming the PA. And the last one, to create a knowledge and the network to delivering the just to educate and like to community of practice, sharing about knowledge about this work. Okay, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kunapol. And also just to note that this was our first presentation that did highlight some key challenges that you faced as well. So thank you for taking that instruction seriously and to the heart. And thank you very much for giving us that overview of the personal assistance scheme. So next, I have the pleasure of inviting Ms. Luisa Manuofeta from Tonga, the government of Tonga's Ministry of Internal Affairs. And she will be speaking a bit, if you can go to the next slide. Wonderful. And to the next slide. And she will be speaking a bit on expanding new services through care and support, and particularly novel collaborations that the government of Tonga has made with NGOs. She's our second to last panelist for today, and then we're going to be opening up to Q&A after we have our discussant. So please go to the next slide, and I pass it.
Thank you, Lauren. And on behalf of the Kingdom of Tonga, the jewel from the Pacific, I would like to greet you all and malolele. And I want to ask you all to please smile. I look at your faces and you're so serious, but here at the Pacific Island spirit, I need your smile. That is giving me the spirit of the day. Please smile. I think for the time management, please don't start my 5 minutes, because I need to show some people here where Tonga is, because I think some of you mistaken Tonga to Toka in the African country. Tonga is right there in the world map with a very small dot. We have a king and we have a queen, we have a prime minister, and we also have a parliament. And right now, we are very happy. Back to the question that was being posed to me, is to share on the expansion and new services of the ministry, and also what we do with the elderlies and also the person with disabilities and children. But before that, I'd like to highlight a few things also this afternoon. With the social protection benefit scheme services and programs in Tonga since 2015. We have disability welfare scheme cash assistance commenced in 2015 to date. This is government funded. We also have Tonga social service program commenced in 2015, and also conditional cash transfer, humanitarian cash transfer to children, and last but not the least, the integrated aged care system with ADB. And that will be implemented this year. These are the social protection programs that have been started with the Kingdom since 2015 to date. It has been 8 years, and I think we achieved quite a lot in such a small span of time. And sitting here and listening to everything that goes on in the past 2 days, I said to myself, Tonga should wait or before starting all this, or we carry on as of now. But to focus on today's questions, what are the lessons learned, the key lessons learned during those 8 years that we work with the non-government organizations, that include the faith-based institutions, and also the government ministries, and as well as the local cover party groups. I think Tonga is quite new on social protections, and listening to all the social protection sessions that are going on here, to me, I'm interpreting the language to the island. Social protection is everyone's roles. And I believe it's not only the government, but also the non-government organization, the civil societies. And I have a few new experiences that in working with non-government organizations that I want to highlight it. I think the word close collaboration means that we should come together as one. Unity is very important. And I think the spirit with us in the Pacific, we have to come together. The government, the church, and everyone who is doing the loving and the contributions to the cause of social protection people. And from there, I believe that we look at what lesson learned. We need to develop a very close network with all our relevant ministry, close collaboration with all stakeholders, and must understand the issue of person with disability. I think all of us are new, and we need to understand the costs, the implications for a person with disability. We also need the ministers of the parliament and the cabinet to also understand where we are coming from, not only with persons with disability, but also the vulnerable population. And last but not the least, I think to end this very 5 minutes, very short for me, I would just want to share, please allow me 2 more minutes, moderator, because it's very important that I do this properly, because South Pacific come along, Tonga came a long way from the Pacific to this meeting, and for 5 minutes, it's not worth my trip to this forum. So let me elaborate properly, because it's important. Thank you. 1 minute. I want to refer back to the COVID-19 and also the volcano eruptions. What do we learn from there? What we learn from there, moderator, that we all have the plans, we all have the strategies, we all have the funds and everything. When it comes to activate all these the classes and everything, with a volcano that the sky is getting dark, the police is calling, run inland, drop everything, and the radio is not working, the light is out, and we have to run, we have to drop everything. And I just want to say this piece because it's very important. In the Pacific, we have one common thing, and that's our faith. And of course, we don't know what to do. All we have to do is to get in, run for our life. And the radio is off. And I have to, this is, I don't know why probably they are embarrassed to say it, the Pacific Island countries. They are embarrassed to say about their faith, but every day that's what they do. They call on the man above, and that's what happened to us. The new emergent for us during this crisis is to call on the man above, Lauren. Yeah. And that's what we did, because it came from worldwide that we should be wiped out. The strength of a volcano eruption is 5 times the bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima. So look at it. How do we exist with all these things that we plan? I'm not saying that they are bad, no. But what I'm saying, there's this one thing that come out of all this, that for Tonga and Samoa and also Fiji and Kiribati and Solomon, don't be embarrassed, because we call on the man above, and we say every day in the morning, we call on him to assist us with our social protection schemes and every intervention in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we do respect that you've come so far to be here, so you've had your additional minute there as well. Thank you for reminding us what protection stands for within the term of social protection and what it means to care for a population especially, with the overview of some of the schemes from Tonga. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our very last speaker, who will also be our discussant, who's going to do an incredible job of wrapping up everything that was said. No, I'm joking. She's not actually going to wrap up everything. She doesn't have to. But she's going to try to connect the dots between some of the things we've heard across our many country panelists, while also sharing with us about the novel creation of the Global Care Policy Portal and Simulator that the International Labour Organization has made. What is it? How can it be used? How can countries best leverage it? So please, Ms. Laura Adati, I'd love to welcome you to the stage, to the mic.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lauren. I'll try very rapidly to share some takeaways. And of course, the first one, let's smile and let's care. So first of all, the power really of transformative and inclusive care and support system. There is really a deep understanding from the experiences we heard that these systems really make a strong contribution to the well-being of all women, children, persons with disability, older persons, and contributes to multiple objectives: gender equality, social justice, sustainable development, and just transitions. So the care economy is really, we moved away from the idea that it's a private dimension, is a private issue, but as a common good is really a matter for public policy. And we see the step, how far the experiences, the countries we heard today have gone to really consider care as a driver of societal progress. Which leads me to the second point about the leading and coordination role of the state as part of this multi-sectoral approach for inclusive care and support system. This is essential to ensure that care is affordable, that it is accessible, of high quality, promotes social justice. And the role of the governments from the experiences we've heard is really pivotal in regulating through, so anchoring this in national laws and really ensuring the sustainable financing of care policies. So ensuring accountability and also the commitment to address changing needs of the population. And we heard a lot about the aging population, but also the needs of persons with disability and also the concerns of women participating in the labor market. Additionally, about this leading role of the government is essential really to ensure decent work for care workers. And I will really bring this dimension of the care workforce, which is essential not only because the large majority of care workers are women, but we need also, as we heard from the experiences, decent work in the care economy, in realizing also the right of independent living for children with disability, but also the human rights of children of being cared for, of older person, of having a decent aging. And this is essential creating skills program, accreditation, ensuring career progression. We heard about the importance of valuing that these care workers, personal care workers, child care workers need to feel valued. And this is can only be done by ensuring adequate pay, working conditions, occupational safety, and health. And also the states have a key role in ensuring the right to freedom of association, the right to organize and collective bargaining through social dialogue, including workers, employers, organizations, representative of unpaid providers, the informal economy we've heard this morning, and also the voice of those that need care and support. And then we heard about also the power of seeing this as investment. The care economy, this is not an expenditure. We need to shift this mindset. And this is why the ILO has created this tool, the Global Care Policy Portal. We invite you to access and consult it as really an example of how we can leverage technologies in providing the largest policy modeling tool that allows you to create tailor-made care policy packages, really ensuring that there is a continuity of leave policies, that there is also provision of support for breastfeeding, childcare, long-term care services, and that they are built keeping in mind quality care jobs. So the users can simulate these policy packages that are really tailored to your realities, hopefully building on social dialogue and this consultation from multi-stakeholder inputs, get a number of results in terms of what are the public investment requirements, what's the job generation. For instance, only in Asia and the Pacific, we estimate using ILO parameters that investing in universal high-quality care services can generate over 170 million jobs by 2035, and the majority will be formal jobs going to women. So this will really allow reducing employment and wage gaps, and also we can calculate also the return on of investment. So in conclusion, really these country experiences show that this is care, investing in care is imperative, and can help achieving multiple goals, that each unique approach is important to tailor specific needs and conditions. We need to keep gender in mind while designing these policies, enabling really the transformation and the redistribution of unpaid care work, and really recognizing the critical role again of government, interministerial collaboration, and partnership with all stakeholders that need a seat at the table. So as we heard, together, let's work together to create a world where care is not a burden, but a right, and a source of empowerment, progress, and social justice. So I'll end here, looking forward to your questions. Thanks.
See, she did my job for me. That was fantastic. I think we heard care is not a burden, care is a right. We heard that care and support should be a common good and not just a private proviso, for example, within the domestic realm of the home, and the need for workers, especially to feel valued, as well as the significant potential for job generation and job creation, specifically in the area of care. And I think, as we've heard from several of our participants, the increasing need for care due to aging populations, due to increasing autonomy for persons with disabilities, and due to the needs of children and the ever-burgeoning population we face. So, with that, I'd like to first thank all of our wonderful panelists for their 5 minutes each of lightning round talks, because that was very difficult to do. And then I would like to open the floor to a few questions from those of you who are in the audience who've now heard some very innovative and distinct approaches to building true systems around care and support, especially those which are leveraging social protection. So we've heard about social assistance schemes. We've heard about providing of things like personal assistance, of providing access to assistive technologies, and so forth. So would love to hear from you in terms of what your questions may be. We have a mic in the center of the floor there. And if not, I also have some questions I can pass to our panelists. So please, any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for your talk and moderation. For the care economy, in terms of geriatric population,
I think, so can you pause for a second? Wonderful.
okay. So for the geriatric population that is increasing, is dementia a universal disability in parts of the world or selected countries? And part two, long COVID. We didn't discuss the effects of long COVID that affect millions of lives and the disability in terms of physical and mental health. And there's a network of, yesterday I did a little bit homework after this session. There's a network of Global Compact that is a work together with the UN and private sectors and civil society. So can the care economy mobilize that network that go across the globe so that some resources can be shared from the private to the public? Just as I said, Dr. Apple or Dr. Nut was lucky to be educated at Bangkok School for the Blind that is 90% funded by private, just as that. And the mental health is not covered by insurance. In some countries they do, but most countries they are not covered. So in that case, not all the disability can be seen. Thank you.
Do we have another question? We might want to take just a few, so we have a second through the round. Okay, I think we have one more question coming up.
It was just more a question of clarification for the gentleman from Mongolia. On the women's empowerment, is it a grant, is it a loan, and what can it be used for? It was like $2,900 over 36 months. Thank you.
And then I believe we have a question that was submitted live as well online. What are some of the inclusion criteria to access a personal assistant in Thailand? So I think that was directed to you, Kunapa. And colleagues, there are microphones that should be on each table. Somehow they're clustered here. We will bring one over to that table, but we have microphones right up here for colleagues who need to respond. Are there other questions we have in the room as well, or shall we take these to start? Okay. I'll pose one broader question to the full group as well, which is around this consideration of challenges. So I think something that's been mentioned multiple times and something that's part of the theme of this session is around multi-sectoral approaches to these care and support systems. What have been some of the challenges you faced and hopefully have overcome, especially in that interministerial collaboration and coordination that Laura was just mentioning in her discussant remarks? So it'd be wonderful to hear from you on that. And I'll pass the microphone.
Okay, thank you, so about concerning the integrated services to collaborate with other agencies, of course, is like the route that we just moving to, because disability is like the whole facet of lives. It's not just one particular like aspect, right? So we require the cooperation from other experts, like for example, let's say in education, for the young children with disabilities, they of course require expertise in education, but on the other hand, they also need a healthcare, right? And also they also need like to be able to transportation in order to get to the school. So these things that it need to be accessible for them. So we have to collaborate with other ministries and departments. So, but our challenges, so because sometimes they don't really understand what about the real needs of the people with disabilities. So sometimes it's require time for them to just to build an understanding. And also usually the government, I'm pretty sure it's happened not only in Thailand, times they work in silos. That's why now in Thailand, it's very lucky we have the National Committee on Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities chaired by the Prime Ministers. In this committee is composed of like all relevant ministries sitting in as the committees, and also with the representatives of the OPDs, like Organization of Persons with Disabilities, so that we can share it and to use this as a place that we can share, and is the way that we can putting forward our work. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Mr. Jensen, would you like to answer the question posed to you as well? Thank you very much, Kunapo.
Thanks for questions. So, as you know, Mongolia is such a big country as a territory. It's 1.5 million square meter big, and only 3.3 million of population. So it's the vast country is disparately populated. So this the program for the women's employment is the goal of the program is to giving the chance or providing the chance to the women, especially in the rural area, and who are taking care of the children, young children at home, or disabled children, and who cannot work as as they full time is working on at home, domestic work, and they cannot work an official job. And then this $2,900 US dollar is providing to giving to those women who are unemployed or disabled, or who are taking care of the children with disability, or who taking care of the child under 3 years. So they can, for example, they can open new childcare centers, and then for that we provide those monies because once they open the new childcare centers, and then the older women have a chance to give their children to childcare, and they have the chance to work as full time. So, and then also the another chance is they taking of the money for without any collateral or interest, and then they can pay also their rent also. And then this is the good example, I guess, because of some families have disabled children, and then one of the father or mother should be stay, or sisters should stay at home as full time to instantly taking care of the children. And then once the government opened that program, the families starting, building the community, and they start opening up the new childcare centers, and then they working in community, and then they one of them is taking care of the children, and then the rest of the is 10 families together, often one family childcare center for disabled children, and then the rest of the families have chance to work as full-time job.
Okay, we'll take one last response here, unless there are others. Yes, okay. So we'll take 2 last responses.
OK， 向大家介绍一下，中国在这个全生命周期照护和支持服务发展方面，是以老人和儿童为重点，完善我们的人口服务体系的。主要是以政府主导、多部门参与，共同促进人口长期均衡发展。第一个部分给大家介绍一下我们关于健全婴幼儿发展有关的政策。主要是围绕全生命周期和健康的全过程，推动生育政策和社会政策配套衔接，完善有关的政策和产假制度，加强孕前、孕产期的健康服务，发展普惠的托育服务体系，加强对家庭的照护和社区服务的支持和指导，鼓励有条件的用人单位提供婴幼儿照护服务，支持企业和社会组织等社会力量提供普惠托育服务。这是在婴幼儿发展方向。在完善养老服务体系方面，推动养老事业和养老产业的协调发展，健全基本养老服务体系，大力发展普惠性养老服务，支持家庭承担养老功能，构建居家社区机构相协调的养老服务体系，完善社区居家养老服务网络，推进公共设施适老化改造，推进专业机构服务向社区延伸，利用存量的资源发展社区养老，积极发展农村互助幸福院等互助性养老，深化公办养老机构改革，提升服务能力和水平， 加强对护理型民办养老机构的政策扶持，加大养老护理型人才的培养力度，扩大养老机构的护理型床位的供给，更好地满足老年人的护理服务需求。
Thank you. We'll have one last remark from Ms. Arati.
Thank you, Lauren. Just a last point on some challenges and what we've been doing also with the simulator at the country level. One of the challenges that we have seen is that in the region we find a lot, half of the country that we have surveyed through our research don't have a maternity branch to fund maternity protection, in particular maternity leave, through compulsory social insurance of public fund as called by our Maternity Protection Convention 183, which, by the way, has not been ratified by any country in the region. So we really call efforts and offer ILO technical assistance for the ratification of Convention 183. And what's really important is to think that when employers are directly liable to pay for care policies, well, this can result in discrimination against women of reproductive age, but also when we talk about paternity leave, this discourages take up, even when paternity is very short. So it's important when we build a gender-responsive social protection system to think to systematically embed the maternity branch and increasingly paternity and parental leave funded by collectively, as we heard today. And we know that 4 countries, Brunei, Cambodia, Nepal, and Pakistan, have taken steps to move away from employer liability. And in Indonesia, the ILO has been working in assisting the government to build a social security branch. And a study was recently published about the coverage of maternity leave. And we know that employer liability doesn't work. Women don't get the benefits. They face discrimination or forced resignation. So a lot needs to be done. And we welcome really the use of the simulator and ILO technical assistance in building a national roadmap and action plan on care that really speaks to this interministerial coordination under the Ministry of Women and Child Protection. And really also, in partnership with the Ministry of Planning, building some key care economy indicator in the planning of the next coming year. So just a couple of examples of what can be done.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you
Miss,
very much.
moderator.
And thank you to all of our panel. Do we have time for one last question? I'm
Last,
looking at the
broad comment.
organizers. No one's stopping me, so
Okay.
sure, one last question.
Samuel Ramia from the Ministry of Finance in Samoa. Thank you to our panelists and as well as yourself. I think acknowledging what Madam just spoke on regarding acknowledgement of paternity, yes, we really need that. Looking at the different worlds that was presented, a world with women and girls, a world with elderlies, I couldn't see the world with men. I'm sure we are part of some world out there, so don't forget us in your... I think one of the other things that I was interested to hear was integrating the part of the culture in your respective countries. Here in the Pacific, caring for your young ones, caring for your parents, your elderlies, is part of, it's built into your family when you grow up. So in a typical Samoan family, you'll have your grandparents, your parents, your siblings, and their wives. They're all in one house. So I'm just trying to draw the line between having that as a right compared to, yes, it's not a burden, obviously, for my culture. But when we do try and put something that's not there and it becomes a social issue, and then the mindset of our children will be different. They will be looking at it as a burden rather than part of a family upbringing. So I just wanted to put it there. But thank you very much for sharing the experiences around the different countries. It's good to see that we're also not forgetting the men. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your comments. I think the last time I checked, men were also part of the older population, also part of persons with disabilities. We definitely have men that are reflected here. I think one of the reasons, and I think something that Laura mentioned quite well, is when we look at the issues around gender, which appeals to both sexes, or to men and women equally, is who tends to bear some of these unpaid care responsibilities, and how does that infringe upon their economic opportunities. So we're looking to create a world where there's greater equity and ability to access economic opportunities, and where everyone has the chance to provide for their families, care for their families in the ways that are most sound for their households. And we're looking specifically at where public responsibility lies in this realm, so that there is a role and a remit for social protection to support families in carrying this forward. We have talked quite a bit about community-based care and support, specifically, which doesn't necessarily upend the idea that care and support happens within the family unit, but really enforces the idea that family units deserve to be supported in these areas, and so do the individuals who are in those family units, whether or not they are carrying out the activities of care and support, or they are those who are receiving care and support or using care and support, et cetera, so that everyone has rights in this discussion, in this debate. I think something very important that we've heard across all of our panelists, and that's been reflected multiple times over, is that it really takes a village to execute an inclusive care and support system that really benefits all. Especially users, especially givers, especially caretakers, et cetera, and that it really requires a networked approach. So you need to have social assistance schemes in place to help cover some of the costs that are related to care. You need to have fiscal policies in place so that you're also able to defray costs, for example, from households, as we heard. You need to have family-friendly policies, so you have things like parental leave, which would mean that both men and women would have the access to be able to take time off with a newborn child or a newly adopted child, for example, as being dual caregivers in a household. You also need legal frameworks so that these rights are actual entitlements that are protected under the law. And of course, as we've mentioned multiple times and time again, you need human capital. You need people who can be trained. You need people who are invested in as care workers to be a part of the paid care economy as well. As much as you need those who are enacting their labor force participation ability. So there's lots of different pieces that are required. I think everyone who's presented here today has shared a little window into some of what their country has done, but because we confined them to 5 minutes, it was only a very small window. So I do recommend that you connect with some of our panelists after this and hear more about the wider ecosystem of care and support measures that have been put in place in their countries. So thank you very much for staying with us through into our last comments here. And please enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone. Thank you.